I used to believe we had the kind of marriage people envied. From the outside looking in, our life was flawless. A beautiful home in Boston, enough financial stability to never worry about bills, and dreams that stretched far beyond what most couples could ever hope for. Rachel and I had mapped out our future down to the smallest details: vacations, investments, even the names of the children we hoped to have one day. I loved her, truly and deeply, and I thought she loved me the same way. Rachel had this way of commanding a room without even trying. She was effortlessly charming, a woman who could hold a conversation with anyone and make them feel like they were the only person in the world. She had ambition too, not the kind that stepped on others to get ahead, but the kind that made you believe she could accomplish anything. I admired that about her. She was full of life, radiant in a way that made people gravitate toward her. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have her. I should have seen the warning signs. There were moments, small, fleeting ones, where Rachel's warmth would flicker, revealing something colder underneath. Times when she seemed more concerned with perception than sincerity, when her affection felt rehearsed rather than real. But I ignored those moments. I told myself that no marriage was perfect, that love was about accepting flaws. Besides, she always knew exactly what to say to make me forget any doubts. Then my father passed away. It was the kind of loss that shakes a man to his core. He had always been my guiding force, the person who taught me about integrity, resilience, and the kind of hard work that builds not just a life, but a legacy. His death was sudden, leaving me with an emptiness that nothing seemed to fill. Rachel was there through it all, holding my hand at the funeral, whispering words of comfort when I broke down in the middle of the night. She told me I wasn't alone, that she would always stand by my side. For a while, I believed her. The inheritance came shortly after, $2 million. Money my father had spent a lifetime earning, money he had entrusted to me to carry on his legacy. I didn't celebrate it. What was there to celebrate? I would have given every cent back if it meant having him here for one more day. But Rachel's eyes lit up when she first heard the amount. At the time, I thought it was just shock, maybe even excitement for our future. She told me the money wouldn't change anything between us, that she didn't care about it, only about me. But looking back, I realize now that it was in that moment, the moment she learned about the inheritance, that everything shifted. At first, nothing seemed different. Rachel continued playing the role of the devoted wife, listening when I talked about how much I missed my father, reassuring me that life would eventually feel normal again. She still made my coffee in the mornings, still curled up beside me at night, still kissed me with the same tenderness. But now, I recognize those days for what they were, the calm before the storm. Because Rachel hadn't changed overnight. She had simply started planning, and I had no idea. I remember the exact moment Jake walked back into our lives. It was a Saturday morning, crisp autumn air seeping through the open window as I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. Rachel was flipping through a magazine, her bare feet tucked beneath her on the couch, looking as relaxed as ever. It had been a few weeks since my father's passing, and though the weight of grief still clung to me, life was beginning to regain some semblance of normalcy. Then the doorbell rang. Rachel glanced at me, then at the clock, before standing. "Who could that be this early?" she mused, making her way to the front door. I heard the hinges creak, the shuffle of footsteps, and then a voice I hadn't heard in over a year. "Hey, big sis. Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Jake. Even before I turned my head, I could already picture the grin stretched across his face. That cocky, boyish smirk that had once fooled me into thinking he was harmless. He was charming. I'd give him that. The kind of guy who knew exactly how to talk his way out of trouble, always armed with a joke or an easy laugh. But underneath the charisma, there was something else, something selfish, something hungry. I stood as he stepped into the living room, arms outstretched like he was walking into a family reunion. His dark hair was messier than I remembered, his shirt slightly wrinkled, and his jeans just a little too loose, like he hadn't been taking care of himself. That should have been my first clue. "Jonathan," he said, nodding in my direction, looking sharp as always. I didn't bother returning the pleasantries. Instead, I turned to Rachel, waiting for an explanation. She gave me a quick, almost nervous smile. "Jake's in town for a bit. He needed a place to crash. I sighed, already sensing where this was going. For how long? Just a few weeks, she said quickly. He's going through a rough patch, but he's got some opportunities lined up. He just needs a little help getting back on his feet. I glanced at Jake, whose grin widened. Don't worry, man. I won't be in your way. Just a couch and some food, and I'll be out of your hair before you know it. I wanted to say no. Every instinct in me screamed that letting Jake stay with us was a mistake. I had never fully trusted him, not because of anything overt, but because of what he represented. He was the kind of man who lived on luck and charm, always looking for the next easy way out. But Rachel was staring at me, waiting for my response, her expression hopeful, and despite my hesitation, I wanted to keep the peace. So I nodded. Fine. A few weeks. Jake beamed, clapping me on the shoulder like we were old friends. You're a good man, Jonathan. I owe you one. I didn't believe that for a second. At first, things were tolerable. Jake was on his best behavior, throwing around casual offers to help around the house, though they never actually materialized. He was talkative, full of stories about business ideas he was working on, investments he was considering, and the big break. He was always just on the cusp of reaching. But the weeks passed, and nothing changed. He never applied for jobs, never contributed a single dollar toward groceries, never so much as offered to wash a dish. Instead, he made himself comfortable, too comfortable. He sprawled out on the couch at all hours, raided the fridge without asking, and acted as if our home was some kind of personal vacation retreat. One night, I came home from work to find him lounging in my recliner, feet up, watching television like he owned the place. Rachel sat beside him, laughing at something he had said, completely unbothered by his presence. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Jake, have you made any progress on those job applications? He didn't even glance away from the screen. I'm working on it, man. These things take time. I exhaled slowly, my patience thinning. It's been 6 weeks. Rachel immediately jumped in. Jonathan, relax. He's trying. It's not like he's doing nothing. But that was exactly what he was doing. Nothing. I had swallowed my frustrations for too long. The burden of supporting an extra person, the lack of respect, the slow invasion of my space. It was all coming to a head. And yet, it wasn't until that night, when I was heading upstairs to bed, that I realized how much worse it really was. I had forgotten my phone in the kitchen and went downstairs to grab it. As I neared the hallway, I heard voices, low, hushed whispers drifting from the other side of the house. Rachel and Jake. I paused, my body tensing. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was just standing there, frozen, as my wife's voice carried through the air. You just have to be patient, Rachel was saying. I'll convince him. He trusts me. There was a pause, then Jake's reply. He doesn't even need the money, Rachel. It's just sitting there. What kind of man wouldn't help out his own family? My stomach twisted. Rachel's voice was softer now, but I still caught her words. He'll cave if we push him hard enough. Something inside me shifted, a quiet, dreadful realization sinking its claws into my gut. This wasn't just about Jake overstaying his welcome. This was something more. I turned and walked away, my mind racing. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. My wife, the woman I had loved and trusted, was plotting against me. But she wasn't the only one who could play this game. I was done being the fool. It was time to start planning. Sleep never came that night. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every word I had overheard. He doesn't even need that money. It's just sitting there. What kind of man wouldn't help out his own family? And Rachel's response. He'll cave if we push him hard enough. The woman I had built a life with, the woman I had trusted more than anyone, was scheming with her brother behind my back. Not just pressuring me, not just trying to persuade me, conspiring. A chill spread through me, a slow, dawning realization of what this meant. This wasn't just Rachel asking for help. This was Rachel calculating how to get what she wanted. For years, I had ignored the signs, chalked up her moments of selfishness to stress or impatience. I had convinced myself that love meant overlooking flaws, that every marriage had bumps in the road. But I saw it now. in a way I never had before. Rachel didn't love me, not the way I had loved her, and maybe she never had. I turned my head to look at her. She was fast asleep, her breathing slow and steady. There was no trace of guilt, no sign of unease. Whatever emotions she might have felt about her betrayal, they weren't enough to keep her up at night. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. I wanted to wake her up right then, to confront her, to demand answers. But I forced myself to stay still. Confrontation wouldn't fix this. I needed to think. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. Rachel was in an unnaturally good mood when I came downstairs for breakfast. She moved around the kitchen with ease, humming softly, making coffee like she had a million times before. She turned when she heard me enter, flashing a bright smile. "Morning, babe. Sleep okay?" I watched her carefully, noting how effortlessly she played the role of the loving wife. "Yeah," I lied, taking a seat at the table. She placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of me, brushing a hand over my shoulder. "I was thinking," she said lightly, "we should plan a trip soon, maybe somewhere warm. A little getaway. A distraction." She was laying the groundwork, softening me up before making her move. I lifted my coffee, taking a slow sip, studying her over the rim of my mug. "That sounds nice," I said evenly. She smiled, pleased with herself, then turned back to the stove. I had to fight the urge to let my anger show. This woman thinks she has me wrapped around her finger. I played along. I let the day pass as if nothing had changed, keeping my responses casual, nodding at the right moments, pretending to be as oblivious as she wanted me to be. But beneath the surface, my mind was working, calculating. And when night fell, I was ready. Rachel made her move the next morning. It started with a sweet breakfast, pancakes, fresh fruit, her usual attempt at playing the doting wife. Then, as she poured herself another cup of coffee, she finally said it. "I've been thinking." Her tone was soft, careful, like she was just floating an idea. I set my fork down, waiting. She sat across from me, stirring her coffee. "Jake's been struggling, you know? And with everything you inherited, it would be nice if we could help him out." I didn't respond right away. I let the silence stretch, forcing her to keep talking. She sighed, as if I was making her work for it. "I mean, you have more than enough, Jonathan. It's not like it would hurt us." There it was. The nudge. The first push. I met her gaze, keeping my expression neutral. "And how much are we talking about?" She brightened at that, as if she thought she was winning. "I don't know. Maybe 50,000? It's not a lot in the grand scheme of things." 50,000. I almost laughed. That was the first request. I had no doubt that if I agreed, there would be another ask. And another. I leaned back in my chair. "I'm not giving Jake $50,000. Rachel blinked, her smile faltering for just a second before she recovered. "Jonathan, come on. He's my brother." I took another sip of my coffee, enjoying the way her frustration simmered just beneath the surface. "And?" Her grip on the mug tightened. "And family helps family." I nodded slowly. "That's interesting." She narrowed her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" I set my coffee down. "Just funny how I never see that logic apply when I need something." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not fair." I tilted my head. "Isn't it?" Her patience snapped. "Jonathan, you're being selfish. If you loved me, you would do this for my family." There it was. The guilt trip. The manipulation. I stared at her for a long moment, then calmly stood up. "No." Rachel's eyes widened. "What?" "No," I repeated, my voice steady. "I'm not giving Jake a dime." The mask slipped. Her face twisted, the softness disappearing in an instant. "You selfish bastard," she spat, slamming her coffee cup down on the table so hard that the liquid splashed over the rim. I remained perfectly still. She wasn't expecting me to be calm. She wanted a fight. She wanted me to lash out, to feel guilty, to crumble under the weight of her anger. I didn't. She shoved back from the table, seething. "Unbelievable. After everything I've done for you." I tilted my head slightly. "Everything you've done for me?" She pointed a sharp finger at me. "Yes. I stood by you through your father's death." She cut herself off, realizing too late that she had just played her hand. I smiled, slow and deliberate. That was support? Or was it just the waiting period before you could get your hands on the money? Rachel's face burned red. And just like that, I saw the moment she realized she had lost control. But she wasn't finished yet. She inhaled sharply, then suddenly, without hesitation, picked up her coffee and threw it at me. The scalding liquid hit my chest, burning my skin. But I didn't flinch. I wiped my shirt, slowly looking up at her. "You're making a mistake, Rachel." She was breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists. But she didn't know yet. Didn't know that I had already started playing my own game. I stood there, letting the burning sensation of the coffee seep into my skin, but I didn't react. Rachel was waiting for it. For me to yell, to lash out, to give her something she could twist and use against me. But I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. She, on the other hand, was unraveling. Her breathing was ragged, her hands still clenched into fists at her sides, her entire body coiled like a snake ready to strike again. It was the first time I had ever seen her lose control so completely, all because I said no. I picked up a napkin, dabbing at the coffee stain on my shirt as if it was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "Are you done?" I asked, my voice infuriatingly calm. Rachel's nostrils flared. "You're being ridiculous, Jonathan. Selfish." I raised an eyebrow. "For refusing to hand over my father's money to your brother?" She scoffed, crossing her arms. "It's our money. We're married. That means what's yours is mine." I tilted my head, taking in the desperation creeping into her voice. This wasn't about Jake. Not really. It never had been. This was about her. She had seen the inheritance as a safety net, a ticket to her version of security, and she had assumed I would just go along with whatever she wanted. I placed both hands on the table and leaned forward slightly. "I want you to say it," I murmured. She frowned. "Say what?" "That it's not about Jake." My voice was steady, almost gentle. "It's about you." Her jaw tightened. "That's not." "Come on, Rachel." I cut her off, my patience wearing thin. "Be honest for once. Jake is just your excuse. You don't care about his struggle. You care about the money." Her lips parted slightly, as if she was about to deny it, but then she hesitated. That hesitation was all the confirmation I needed. I straightened. "You don't love me, do you?" That got her attention. She blinked, caught off guard by the shift in conversation. "Of course I do," she said quickly, too quickly. But I saw it now, the truth underneath the words. She didn't love me. She loved the life I provided. She loved the stability, the comfort, the resources. Love should have meant that my grief mattered more than a bank account, that my refusal to give away my inheritance was respected instead of fought over like a spoiled child demanding candy. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "You're a good actress, Rachel," I said. "I'll give you that." Her expression darkened. "Jonathan, don't do this." I gave her a long, hard look before responding. "Do what?" Her hands clenched at her sides again, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "You're making this bigger than it has to be. I'm your wife. We're supposed to support each other. What's so wrong about helping my brother?" I laughed, a quiet, humorless sound. "Support each other?" I echoed. "You mean I support you while you take advantage of me?" She opened her mouth to argue, but I lifted a hand to stop her. "Don't," I warned. For the first time, there was something in my voice that made her hesitate, something she hadn't heard before. Finality. I turned to leave the kitchen, but before I could take more than 2 steps, she threw out the words she had been holding on to, the words she thought would break me. "If you don't do this," she hissed, "I will divorce you." I stopped. The room went silent except for the ticking of the kitchen clock. Slowly, I turned to face her again, and what I saw nearly made me laugh. She thought she was still in control. She thought she was the one setting the terms, making the threats. I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to start feeling nervous. Then, very calmly, I smiled. "Funny you mention that," I said. "I've already served you divorce papers." Her face went completely blank. For the first time, she was the one caught off guard. She blinked once, twice. Then she let out a sharp laugh, as if she thought I was joking. Nice try, she scoffed. You wouldn't. I walked to the kitchen counter, picked up a folder I had placed there earlier, and slid it across the table. I would, I said simply. Rachel didn't move at first. She just stared at the folder, as if looking at it for too long might make it disappear. Then, with slow, mechanical movements, she reached for it, flipping it open. Her eyes scanned the pages, then widened. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned the next page, and the next. When she finally looked up at me, her face was a mixture of fury and disbelief. You planned this. I shrugged. You should know by now, Rachel. I don't like surprises. Her breathing was shallow, her hands gripping the papers so tightly her knuckles turned white. I could almost see the wheels turning in her mind, scrambling for a way out, a way to turn this back in her favor. Jake. Her eyes flickered toward the doorway, as if waiting for her brother to come storming in and back her up. But for the first time, she was alone. She swallowed, forcing a bitter smile. You're bluffing. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Try me. Her confidence wavered. I saw it in the way her hands clenched and unclenched, the way she suddenly seemed smaller than she had just moments ago. I had always let her have the last word, always given in to her manipulation, always played the fool. But not this time. This time, I was the one in control. She opened her mouth to argue, to plead, to something. But before she could say another word, I turned and walked out of the room. Let her sit with it. Let her realize what she had lost. By the time she caught up, the damage would already be done, and I wouldn't be looking back. The silence in the house was suffocating. Rachel hadn't moved from her spot in the kitchen. I had left her there with the divorce papers, her expression frozen in that perfect blend of shock and disbelief. A part of me had expected her to come storming upstairs, screaming accusations, throwing things, maybe even begging. But no, she just stood there. I could imagine what was going through her mind. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She had expected me to cave, to feel guilty, to surrender like I always had. She thought her threat of divorce would shake me, send me scrambling to appease her. But instead, I had been the one to drop the bomb, and she hadn't seen it coming. I sat on the edge of our bed, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. Rachel and I had built a life together, or at least I thought we had. But the more I looked back, the more I saw the cracks, the subtle ways she had shaped everything to her benefit, the manipulation disguised as affection, the small betrayals that I had ignored. Maybe I had loved her too much, or maybe I had just been too blind. But I saw clearly now. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Then a shadow at the doorway. Rachel stood there, her arms crossed, the divorce papers still in her hand. But her face was unreadable. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was calculating. So that's it, she said finally, her voice eerily calm. I exhaled through my nose, rubbing my hands together. That's it. She let out a short, humorless laugh. You're seriously divorcing me over this? I looked up at her, my gaze steady. I'm divorcing you because I finally see you for what you are. Her lips pressed together. She stepped further into the room, tilting her head slightly. And what am I, Jonathan? I leaned back, my voice steady. A liar. A manipulator. A woman who thought she could take everything I have and walk away without consequence. She inhaled sharply through her nose, but she didn't argue. She knew I was right. Rachel wasn't the type to admit defeat, but she also wasn't stupid. She had been outplayed, and now she was trying to figure out her next move. Fine, she said after a long pause, her voice quieter now. You want to do this? Let's do this. And then, she smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that sent a cold shiver down my spine. I should have known right then, this wasn't over. The next morning, I woke up to find Rachel missing. Her side of the bed was cold, the blankets untouched. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had finally accepted reality and left. But as I made my way downstairs, I found her sitting in the living room, dressed in one of her designer outfits, legs crossed, sipping coffee as if nothing had changed. And next to her, Sprawled lazily on the couch was Jake. I stopped in the doorway, gripping the frame so hard my knuckles turned white. Rachel set her coffee down, looking up at me with a smirk. "Good morning, honey." Jake grinned, stretching his arms behind his head. "Heard you two had an interesting conversation last night." I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. What is he still doing here? Rachel stood up, brushing non-existent lint off her dress. "Oh, Jake and I had a great talk," she said smoothly. "And I realized something." I didn't speak. I let her dig her own grave. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto mine. "You don't get to just decide how this ends, Jonathan. You think filing some papers changes anything? We're married, which means that if this goes to court, I'm entitled to a whole lot more than you think." My jaw tightened. "Is that a threat?" She smiled. "It's a promise." Jake chuckled from the couch, clearly enjoying himself. "I told you, bro. You should have just handed over the money. Would have been easier." I turned my gaze to him, my patience wearing thin. "And I told you to get out of my house." His smirk faltered, just for a second, but Rachel placed a hand on his arm, stopping him from responding. "Jonathan," she said sweetly, "you really want to do this the hard way?" I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears. The sheer audacity, the arrogance, it was astounding. I exhaled slowly, then smiled. A real smile, one that made Rachel hesitate. I took a step forward. "You think you're entitled to my money?" Rachel's smirk returned. "It's our money." I nodded slowly. "Right. And you think if you drag this through court, you'll win?" She lifted her chin. "With a good lawyer?" "Absolutely." I let out a quiet chuckle. "See, that's where you made your mistake." She frowned. "What mistake?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen a few times. Then I turned it around, showing her the recording of last night's conversation. Her face drained of color. Jake sat up straight. "Wait, what the?" Rachel snatched the phone from my hand, her fingers shaking as she played it back. "You just have to be patient. I'll convince him. He trusts me. He doesn't even need the money, Rachel. It's just sitting there. What kind of man wouldn't help out his own family? He'll cave if we push him hard enough." The room was dead silent. Rachel's grip tightened on the phone. I took it back from her and slipped it into my pocket. "That's admissible in court, by the way," I said casually. "Premeditation, conspiracy, financial manipulation." I turned to Jake. "Fraud." Jake looked genuinely worried now. Rachel, however, was still processing. I leaned in slightly. "You will sign those papers, Rachel. You will walk away with nothing. And if you even think about trying to fight me on this, I will bury you in legal fees until you have no choice but to beg for a settlement." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, Rachel had nothing to say. I straightened, adjusting my watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my lawyer." "Jake, don't be here when I get back." I turned and walked out the door without looking back. The game was over, and I had won. The house was eerily silent when I returned that evening. I half expected Rachel to be waiting for me in the living room, perched on the couch with her arms crossed, ready for round two. But as I stepped inside, all I was met with was emptiness. No sound of her heels clicking on the floor. No exaggerated sighs. No sarcastic remarks cutting through the air. For a moment, I thought she had actually left. Then I heard it, shuffling upstairs. I exhaled, rolling my shoulders as I made my way to the bedroom. The door was open just a crack, the dim glow of the bedside lamp spilling into the hallway. When I pushed it open fully, I found Rachel standing by the closet, a suitcase half-packed at her feet. She didn't look at me right away. Instead, she kept folding clothes with meticulous precision, her fingers gripping the fabric a little too tightly. "Packing already?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She let out a dry laugh. "Well, I figured since my loving husband has already decided I'm not welcome here anymore, I should probably make arrangements." I leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "Rachel, this isn't a game. You lost. You need to accept that." Her hands stilled. Slowly, she turned to face me, her eyes dark with something unreadable. "You really think I lost?" I arched a brow. "I don't think, I know." Her lips curved into a humorless smile. You may have caught me off guard, Jonathan, but don't mistake that for defeat. You don't know what I'm capable of. I exhaled, shaking my head. Rachel, you were caught red-handed. I have the recording. I have the legal upper hand. There's nothing left for you to fight for. She crossed her arms. You think that's all it takes? A little recording? She scoffed. You're so naive. I studied her carefully. There was something in the way she said it, something in the way she held herself, like she was still playing the long game. I took a slow step forward. What are you planning? She tilted her head, her eyes gleaming. Oh, wouldn't you like to know? I clenched my jaw, my patience thinning. Rachel. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. You've embarrassed me, humiliated me, thrown me out like I meant nothing to you. Did you really think I'd go quietly? A cold realization crept down my spine. Rachel wasn't just angry, she was vengeful. I had expected some resistance, maybe a tantrum, maybe some desperate last-minute bargaining. But this was something else entirely. She wanted to destroy me. I inhaled deeply, forcing my voice to remain steady. Rachel, this can end now. You sign the papers, walk away with some dignity, and we both move on. She let out a low, humorless chuckle. Dignity? Her gaze sharpened. You took that from me the moment you blindsided me with those divorce papers. Her words held weight. Rachel had never been the kind of woman to accept defeat. She thrived on control, on manipulation, on getting exactly what she wanted. And when that was stripped from her, when she was backed into a corner with no way out, she did what any desperate person would do. She searched for a way to burn everything down. I exhaled sharply. Rachel, don't do something you'll regret. Her lips curled into a slow smirk. Oh, Jonathan, she whispered. You have no idea what regret feels like. But you will. Then, without another word, she turned back to her suitcase and continued packing. And that's when I knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Rachel moved out the next morning. She didn't make a scene. She didn't scream or cry or beg. She simply packed up her things, gave me one last unreadable look, and walked out the front door. It should have felt like relief. It should have felt like the final step toward freedom. But instead, I felt something else, anticipation. Because I knew Rachel well enough to understand that she wasn't finished. And I was right. It started small. A few of our mutual friends suddenly stopped reaching out. People I had known for years, people who had always been friendly, were suddenly distant. Conversations grew shorter. Invitations stopped coming. Then the rumors started. Whispers that I had cheated on Rachel, that I had financially abused her, that I had manipulated her into signing the divorce papers. I didn't even need to ask where it was coming from. Rachel was playing her cards carefully, poisoning the well just enough to make sure she came out looking like the victim. She wasn't attacking me directly. No, that would have been too obvious. Instead, she was planting seeds, knowing that if you tell a lie often enough, people start to believe it. And the worst part? It was working. My colleagues at work began treating me differently. My neighbors avoided eye contact, and even my own mother called me one night, asking if the things she had heard were true. Rachel had always been good at one thing, turning perception into reality. She had lost in the courtroom, so now she was trying to win in the only way she had left, by taking my reputation, by making sure that when people looked at me, all they saw was the villain in her story. I sat in my office that night, staring at my phone, scrolling through social media posts filled with carefully crafted, vague statements from Rachel. Posts about betrayal, about false love, about narcissistic partners who hide behind charm and money. She never mentioned my name. She didn't have to. I set my phone down, exhaling slowly. This was what she wanted. She wanted me to react, to fight back, to engage in her little war of public opinion. She wanted me to lose control. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I had already played the long game once, and I was prepared to do it again. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tapping against the desk. Rachel thought she could rewrite the story. She had forgotten one thing. I was still holding the pen. The legal battle started quietly. No grand confrontations, no dramatic court dates right away. Just papers, formal filings, and strategic moves made in the background. Rachel had hired a lawyer. That much was clear. She was going for the long game, trying to bleed me dry in legal fees before I even set foot in a courtroom. She had underestimated me. I wasn't some desperate man grasping at straws. I had prepared for this. The moment I overheard her and Jake scheming, I had put things in motion. My lawyer, Mr. Phillips, was already 10 steps ahead. The inheritance was protected by my father's estate planning, locked in airtight legal documents Rachel had no claim to. But that didn't mean she wouldn't try. I received the first official document a week later. Rachel was contesting the divorce on the grounds of unfair financial treatment. In simpler terms, she wanted a share of my inheritance. I sat in my office, the papers spread out on my desk, the words almost laughable. Rachel wasn't entitled to a single cent. But that wasn't the point. She knew she wouldn't win. What she wanted was to drag this out, to make it a war. And if there was one thing Rachel was good at, it was making people believe her version of events. The rumors she had started were already spreading like wildfire. I had mutual friends texting me, asking what had happened. Some were careful, treading lightly, while others outright accused me of mistreating her. I didn't respond to any of them. Let them believe what they wanted. Let them take sides. I had no interest in proving myself to people who were so easily swayed by one-sided stories. Instead, I focused on the real battle. The first time I saw Rachel in court, she was dressed for the part. Elegant but understated, her makeup flawless, her expression carefully composed. She was the very picture of a wronged woman, someone who had been blindsided by a cruel, selfish husband. I almost admired the performance. She didn't look at me as she sat at her table, her lawyer whispering something in her ear. I could already predict their argument. Rachel would play the devoted wife who had sacrificed everything for our marriage, only to be discarded when I no longer found her useful. Too bad I had the receipts. Mr. Phillips stood, his voice calm and authoritative. Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to submit a recorded conversation as evidence. Rachel's lawyer stiffened. Rachel's eyes flickered, her composure cracking for the first time. I leaned back in my chair, watching as the courtroom played back her own words. You just have to be patient. I'll convince him. He trusts me. He doesn't even need the money, Rachel. It's just sitting there. What kind of man wouldn't help out his own family? He'll cave if we push him hard enough. The silence in the room was deafening. Rachel's lawyer quickly tried to object, but the damage was already done. The judge listened carefully, his expression unreadable. And then, slowly, he turned to Rachel. Mrs. Bennett, do you have an explanation for this? Rachel's jaw tightened. I could see the panic in her eyes, the way she scrambled for an answer, for a way out. But there was none. She had spent years perfecting the art of deception. But today, in front of the judge, with her own voice betraying her, she had nothing to hide behind. Her lips parted slightly, as if she was about to speak. Then she shut her mouth again. She knew she had lost this round. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Rachel's defeat in court didn't just stay inside the courtroom. Word spread fast. The same people who had rushed to support her, who had whispered about my supposed abuse and financial cruelty, suddenly had nothing to say. Mutual friends, people who had distanced themselves from me, started reaching out again. Hey man, I just wanted to say I had no idea what she was up to. If I had known. Jonathan, I feel terrible for believing her. She made it seem like. Bro, Rachel played us all. You good. I didn't respond to most of them. Not out of anger. I just didn't care anymore. People had been quick to take sides when they thought I was the villain. They didn't deserve a place in my life now that the truth was out. Rachel, on the other hand, she was losing everything. Her social circle gone. Her carefully crafted reputation shattered. She had put everything into playing the victim, believing that if she screamed loud enough, people would never question her. But the truth had a way of cutting through the noise. And now, Rachel was alone. A few days after the court hearing, I received a message from Rachel's lawyer. She wanted to settle. I sat in my office, reading the email over and over, a slow smile spreading across my face. So this was it. Rachel had realized that dragging this out any longer would only hurt her more. She wasn't fighting for a share of my inheritance anymore. She wasn't demanding spousal support. She just wanted something. Anything to walk away with so she wouldn't be left empty-handed. I tapped my fingers against my desk, considering. Then, without hesitation, I replied, "No settlement. She signs the papers as they are, or we go back to court." I didn't even have to wait long for a response. The next morning, I received confirmation. Rachel had signed the divorce papers. No money, no compensation, no settlement, nothing. She had tried to destroy me, but in the end, she had only destroyed herself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel since this all started. Peace. Rachel was out of my life. Jake had disappeared, nowhere to be found. And me? I was free. I had won, and I never looked back. Court had been a battlefield, and I had walked away victorious. But Rachel wasn't just defeated. She was obliterated. Her reputation, once polished and pristine, was now in shambles. The people who had once fawned over her, who had nodded along to her sob stories and whispered behind my back, had all gone silent. The sympathy she had carefully curated evaporated the moment the truth came to light. And yet, I knew Rachel. She wasn't the type to go down quietly. So when I walked into the courtroom for the final hearing, I braced myself for something. Maybe she would put on a final performance, crocodile tears and trembling hands, begging the judge for some last-minute mercy. Maybe she'd make a scene, accuse me of gaslighting her, claim she was pressured into signing the papers. But what I saw instead was worse. She was empty. Rachel sat at the plaintiff's table, her body stiff, her face pale. There was no fight left in her, no fire in her eyes, no sharp-tongued remarks waiting to cut me down. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering something, but she barely reacted. This wasn't the same woman who had once thrown hot coffee at me in a fit of rage. This wasn't the woman who had smirked at me, believing she had me trapped. She looked small. I should have felt satisfied, maybe even triumphant. But instead, all I felt was nothing. Rachel had made her choices. She had played the game and lost. Now, she had to live with it. The judge took his seat, adjusted his glasses, and glanced at both parties before clearing his throat. "Mrs. Bennett, before we proceed, do you have any final statements regarding the division of assets?" Rachel lifted her head slightly, her eyes dull. For a brief moment, she hesitated. Then, she shook her head. "No, Your Honor." And just like that, it was over. I walked out of that courtroom a free man. The divorce finalized, the battle won. There was no dramatic climax, no last-minute attempt to sway the verdict. Just the simple, quiet conclusion of something that should have ended long ago. Rachel had nothing left to say, and I had no reason to listen. Freedom tasted different when you earned it. I thought about that a lot in the days after the divorce. It wasn't just about escaping Rachel. It was about reclaiming myself. For too long, I had been caught in her web, bending to her will, ignoring my instincts. I had let love blind me, let her charm disguise her greed. But now I had my life back. The first thing I did was move. The house, the one Rachel and I had built our lives in, was tainted. Every corner held memories I didn't want anymore. Late-night conversations that had meant nothing. Smiles that had been manipulations. The ghosts of a marriage that had never truly existed. I found a new place, a high-rise apartment overlooking the city. Modern, sleek, mine. No more Rachel. No more Jake. Just me. It was strange at first. The silence. The lack of another presence in the space. I had been so used to adjusting to Rachel's moods, adjusting to her demands, adjusting to a life that had always revolved around her. Now, for the first time in years, I didn't have to adjust for anyone. And I liked it. I didn't keep tabs on Rachel. I didn't have to. People love to talk. Even if I didn't ask, the whispers found their way to me. Rachel was struggling. The money she had hoarded was draining fast. The social circle she had relied on had grown smaller. The friends who had supported her during the divorce were nowhere to be found now that she had nothing left to offer. I heard that Jake had moved on to his next scheme, some business venture that collapsed within months. Last I knew, he was couch surfing, burning through bridges like he always did. Rachel, meanwhile, was desperate. She tried to find sympathy, to spin the narrative in her favor, but the damage had already been done. Her lies had been exposed in a court of law. No one was going to take her side anymore. I never reached out, never checked in. She had made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. It was months later, on a quiet afternoon, that I saw her again. I hadn't planned on it. I was sitting at a cafe downtown, enjoying a rare day off, when I heard my name. At first, I thought I had imagined it. Then I turned, and there she was. Rachel. She looked different. She had always been put together, always effortlessly beautiful, always carrying herself with a quiet arrogance. But now she looked tired. The confidence was gone. Her eyes, once sharp and calculating, were hollow. There were faint dark circles beneath them, and the designer clothes she used to flaunt now looked worn. She took a hesitant step forward. "Jonathan." I didn't speak. She swallowed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I tilted my head. "For what?" Her lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected me to ask. "For everything," she murmured. I studied her carefully. There was no performance here. No act. For the first time since I had known her, Rachel was genuinely remorseful. Or maybe she was just defeated. Either way, it didn't matter. I gave her a small nod. "All right." She blinked, as if she had expected more. As if she had expected me to engage, to reminisce, to maybe, just maybe, leave the door open for something. But I didn't. I finished my coffee, stood up, and walked past her without another word. She was warm, kind, the kind of woman who didn't play games or expect grand performances. She smiled as she poured us both a glass of wine, leaning across the table with an easy confidence. "Do you ever think about how different life could have been?" she asked. I thought about Rachel, about the wasted years, the betrayal, the lessons learned too late. Then I thought about now, about peace, about freedom, about the future. I smiled. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But everything led me here." Natalie grinned. "And?" I lifted my glass. "And I wouldn't change a thing." As I clinked my glass against hers, I realized something. Rachel was just a chapter in my story. But I was finally writing my own ending. And for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was meant to be. Life after Rachel was quiet, peaceful, and yet there were still remnants of her presence, echoes of the war we had fought, lingering traces of the past I had severed. It wasn't that I missed her. I didn't. I had no desire to rewind time, to undo the decisions that had led me here. But after years of walking on eggshells, after bending myself to fit into the shape of a marriage that had never been real, adjusting to freedom felt strange. I had built my life around compromise, around her. Now, I had no one to answer to, no one to second-guess my choices, no tension waiting for me at home, no manipulation lurking behind affectionate words. And yet, sometimes I'd catch myself waiting for it, waiting for the guilt trips, waiting for the passive-aggressive sighs, waiting for the suffocating presence of a woman who no longer existed in my world. But the truth was, Rachel had already faded, and I was still here. It took time for people to forget the damage Rachel had tried to do. For a while, there were still whispers in certain circles. The remnants of her carefully crafted sob story, the lingering doubt in the minds of those who had been too quick to take her side. I didn't care what they thought. I wasn't interested in proving anything to anyone. I had won in the only way that mattered, with facts, evidence, and the cold, hard truth. Still, I knew Rachel. She wouldn't have just disappeared without trying one last trick. And I was right. It was late one evening when my phone buzzed. I had been expecting it. Rachel had been too quiet lately, and Rachel was never quiet unless she was plotting. I picked up my phone, and there it was. A message. "Rachel, can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a moment before setting the phone down. I didn't reply. She messaged again a few minutes later. "Rachel, please, Jonathan. I just want to clear the air." I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. There was nothing left to clear, but a part of me was curious. Not because I wanted closure. I had already found it. Not because I wanted to see her again. I didn't. I just wanted to know what her final move was. So I replied. "Me? What do you want, Rachel?" Her response came almost instantly. Rachel, just 5 minutes. In person. Please. I almost laughed. This woman had spent months dragging me through hell, smearing my name, trying to rob me blind, and now she wanted to talk? Still, I agreed. I needed to see her face one last time, to confirm that I had one. I met Rachel at a small cafe downtown. Neutral ground, public, safe, controlled. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, her fingers curled around a coffee cup. When she looked up and saw me, something flickered in her expression. She looked tired. Not the polished, carefully put-together woman she had always been, but worn. I sat across from her, folding my hands on the table. All right, you have 5 minutes. She exhaled slowly, her gaze dropping to her coffee. I don't know where to start. I gave her a bland look. Try starting with the truth. You've never done that before. She winced. Jonathan. What? I leaned back. You asked me to meet you. You said you wanted to clear the air. So, go on. She hesitated. Then, finally, she spoke. I lost everything. I didn't react. That tends to happen when you lie, manipulate, and try to destroy someone who trusted you. Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup. I didn't mean for things to get so bad. I scoffed. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, you meant every single thing you did. She swallowed, looking down, and for the first time, I saw it. Regret. Not because she cared about me, not because she wanted to fix things, but because she had lost her reputation, her security, her place in the world she had built. Do you want an apology? She asked quietly. I studied her for a moment before shaking my head. No. She looked up, surprised. I continued. An apology won't change anything, Rachel. It won't erase what you did. It won't make you a better person. And it sure as hell won't bring back the years I wasted on you. She flinched, but I didn't let up. You don't regret hurting me. You regret the consequences. You regret losing. I leaned forward slightly. And that's the difference between us. I lost you, and I didn't regret a single thing. Her breath hitched. I stood up, sliding my chair back. Goodbye, Rachel. She looked up at me, her eyes shining with something unreadable. You really don't care anymore, do you? I smiled, a real, genuine smile. No, I don't. Then I turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't look back. That was the last time I ever saw Rachel. No more messages. No more desperate attempts to stay in my life. She faded into the background, just another mistake I had left behind. And me? I moved forward. I built something better. I surrounded myself with people who actually cared. I focused on my happiness, on my peace.